Signore e signori, buonasera e benvenuti a Tutti a Casa. Good evening, everybody. We are delighted to have you here in the most beautiful opera theater in Italy, possibly the world. There is one non-Italian theater. We are not going to reveal to you where we really are and where we virtually are. It's going to be a quiz in the quiz. Let's say it's the Casa Italiana zerilli-marimò version of the opera quiz. I'm delighted to have this fantastic group of colleagues, people with whom I work, I would say, on a daily basis, and I'm delighted to be working with them, and you'll understand why. Why did we decide to do this conversation? Because Casa Italiana zerilli-marimò and the Department of Italian Studies are definitely in the US and probably everywhere else the place to be for young people to be introduced to opera, to love it, to be enthusiastic and excited about it. And you'll understand how we do that with the three people that are here with me and many more other friends that help us in this very important and very exciting mission. I would like to start with Julian Sachs, who is the media and program coordinator of Casa Italiana. He normally sits back in the projection room, or for Tutti a Casa, he's the producer, director, technical consultant. You never see his face. There he is, Julian Sachs. Julian, benvenuto. E qua vorrei un applauso, magari Julian ci mette in sottofondo, come se fossimo davvero a teatro. And Julian is also responsible for the great trailer that you just saw, and I'm forever indebted to him for having put not my face over my name, but
Bruce Willis.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Normally, that's what the students tell me when they want me to raise their grade. Oh, you really look like Bruce Willis. I just wish. Second, we have Roberto Scarcella Perino, composer in residence at Casa Italiana zerilli-marimò, and also a colleague in the Department of Italian Studies, where he teaches language and opera. And we have had these relationship, especially during the summer, when Roberto is with me in Florence, normally, unfortunately, not this summer physically, for the reasons you know. And he teaches a course on Italian opera when we are in Florence, taking advantage of the fact that we are in Italy and taking his students to see live performances everywhere we go. And then we have Eugenio Refini, who is the last member of this family. He joined the Department of Italian Studies last year with enthusiasm and passion, and we couldn't be happier to be able to rely on him for this enterprise. Eugenio teaches Italian literature, but he also happens to be an accomplished and trained musician with a background also in the history of music. So you understand why this combination of people is going to be strategic. But Julian, tell the people who never see your face, because you're always back there or hidden somewhere in the Zoom world, what is exactly that you do for opera and young people at the Casa?
Okay, well, people who come often to the Casa or who have the possibility of seeing our programming know that we do a lot of stuff that has to do with opera and classical music in general. We have an ongoing series. Our most popular series is Adventures in Italian Opera with Fred Plotkin. All our events are open to the general audience, adventures, interviews, important people from the world of opera. And so what I do with that is, of course, provide technical assistance to Fred Plotkin, who is an expert on everything Italian, let alone opera.
You're the most mentioned person by Fred Plotkin on our stage. The most evoked person. Even more than Pavarotti, Tebaldi, and Mirella Freni. Julian.
Yeah, I'm often asked to queue up the next video or soundbite. We also have, of course, we have all sorts of events that have to do with opera throughout the year. We collaborate with opera theaters in Italy, like the Reggio in Parma, the Massimo in Palermo, Rossini Opera Festival, etc. And we have a music club led by Gina Crusco, who is the artistic director of Underworld Productions Opera, a small opera company in New York. And
I want to say that the group led by Gina, that is really a music understanding group with a very faithful core of participants, continued to meet throughout these months very faithfully, and it was so encouraging to see them from any walk of life, and in that case from any age, profession, meet with Gina under her leadership, listen, understand, discuss music in all its components, not only opera. But what is exactly that you do for the mission that is the subtitle of our evening? So what do you do to drag young people to the opera? Do you need to drag them, or there is any other way to do it?
No, I don't think you need to drag them, but you do need to offer some opportunities for them. What I try to do is I try to complement the already rich offering that we have at Casa Italiana for everyone and create something that is exclusively thought for a young audience. Trying to fill in the blanks of what they need to realize that going to the opera is a great idea for an evening pastime. Because I think that what's really missing among young generations is the idea, oh, what should we do tonight? Should we go to a bar? Should we go to a film? Should we go to the opera? Let's see what's on. Let's see what are they doing at the Met tonight? Because in fact, that's why we created this club that's called Opera to the People. We called it that for a reason, because we want opera to be a regular evening entertainment that the people do after work, that the people go to after work. We don't want it to be something that is very exceptional, rare, something like that. So we decided to organize as Casa Italiana about 6, let's call it events, in which we decide, okay, we're going to take a group of students to an opera, a live performance of an opera. And before doing that, we're going to meet the night before at Casa Italiana in the library, and we're going to have some pizza and talk.
That's where the pizza comes in. Tell us about the pizza.
Exactly. Well, the pizza is, everyone loves pizza, so you can't go wrong with pizza. But I think also figuratively,
pizza is as Italian as opera. We can also say that.
Let's say figuratively speaking, it helps to create a trail of breadcrumbs, of pizza crumbs, that the students can then follow when they go to the opera and avoid falling in the several pitfalls that can occur when you go to the opera for the first time, for the first times, or you hear a piece of music for the first time, any kind of music. That is losing track, getting bored, and which are absolutely normal things that will happen in any genre of music if you haven't heard it before, if you don't know anything about it before. So what I try to do in Opera to the People is to give students a few hooks, we could say, have them hear some of the most important parts throughout the opera, not concentrating only on one little part of the opera, but sort of giving them a treasure map of the experience that they will then find when they attend the performance live, so that every time something happens, they know what's about to happen next, and it's very easy to keep track and to stay alert.
Thank you, Julian. And he's never going to say it because he's way too modest, but what he does is really pretty incredible, because at the end of a long school day where students go to class morning and afternoon, we are now able, it started small. We didn't have big numbers, and it was a very small endeavor at the beginning. Now we filled the library and we have like 30, 40 students there that for 3 hours, 3 entire hours, sit down, talk about music, listen to music. Julian is really the soul and the spirit of this. He will tell you, I'm not a teacher. I'm not teaching a course. This is not what I do. I coordinate the group. Yes, it's true, but they really go over every single aspect. And he keeps repeating, and it really is true. And it's a pleasure for me when I go there and I sneak in without saying anything. It's very hard for me because I speak a lot. To see the students feeling comfortable. They know they're not going to be graded. they can ask just about any kind of question. I think once I came in and the student asked, what is that stick that the guy holds in his hand? And the other time it was somebody who knew Italian, why soprano ends with an O, even if it's always a woman. So, and really Julian answers to all these questions with great ease and in a fun way. And I think the informal aspect and the excitement is created around the pizza and around the very familiar environment. And it's, yes, it's an age-restricted club. Normally Casa is welcoming and everybody comes to everything, but we decided that in this case, it made sense to have a specific target age-wise. That is the target of our students and of people in their age range. So there are also people not from NYU coming, young people not from NYU coming. And some of them are Italian in New York who have never been to the opera, and some of them are Americans or from any other part of the world. It's a great, exciting group. Julian, we're going to go back to you, but now we're going to move to Roberto. Roberto, you're a composer and a professor as well. Tell us something about what is your specific mission within these huge job of getting young people excited about opera?
As a composer, I have different mission because as a composer, for sure, to invite the audience, a young audience, to see new production, new operas, be interested like the old audience used to be excited to see the premiere of Traviata or premiere of Butterfly or Nozze di Figaro. So for me, for sure, is to give this passion to the students of the form, the art form that is the opera, so the genre. So everything's connected with mainly with the music, but also with the story, with the words, and everything that is connected to the genre itself. So this is for me as a composer, is to create a new work that can be interested and loved by new audience. And thanks to the Casa Italiana, I got also the commission to write a new opera that unfortunately is not going to be now, but in 2021, that is A Sweet Silence in Cremona, and also is the story of the power of music. So this is what I would love, that the message to give to the young students.
Perfect. Roberto, one thing, who is your audience? Who do you have in mind when you write a new opera? And you wrote two in a very short period of time. And one I haven't heard, obviously, because I'm desperately waiting for the premiere. But the previous one, that is Furiosos, that is an adaptation of Ludovico Ariosto's Orlando Furioso, I saw and I loved. So who is your audience? Who do you have in mind? Do you have your students in mind? Do you have the regular opera goers in mind?
Yeah, the students are in mind because I write for young singers, young musicians. Most of the time they are like, so the main idea is to write something that they will love to play, they will love to sing. So of course, the generation is the young generation. So I think about the future more than the past.
Thank you, Roberto. We're going to go back to you. Eugenio, among your many talents, you have brilliant titles for your opera courses. Tell us about the last two courses about opera you taught for us at New York University. And tell us briefly what you meant to accomplish in each one of these films and which were the most pleasant surprises that you had teaching these courses, because I know you had a few.
Right. Yes, actually, I did have several surprises, and both classes were really meant to bring opera to the students in sort of interdisciplinary kind of way, which is what I also do for my own research. And the first class is entitled Drama Queens, Opera, Gender, and the Poetics of Excess. And it's really about the idea of excess and excessive kind of things as the fuel of opera. And the idea was also to go through the history of the genre from its inception around 1600 with Monteverdi in particular, whose birthday is today, by the way, and up to the 20th century with modern and contemporary opera, trying to chase this trope of the drama queen as one of the prototypical sort of characters in opera, but also trying to look at the ways in which the audience is deeply affected by the experience of the opera. And the other class, which I taught in the spring, which is just over, was opera and politics. And in that case, the idea was to think through the intersections of opera and politics, looking at ways in which literary materials get adapted into opera, and what it means in terms of dynamics of change and conflict at a political level when they transition from one genre, say a play or a novel, into an opera. I was really amazed by the many unexpected responses which I got from the students. I think one of the best sort of surprises is the fact that two students of mine who took both classes ended up, instead of writing a final paper, they composed two chamber operas based on the topics of the classes. And this was, just amazing.
Tell us the title of their opera, the topic of one of their operas, composed during your course. That's exciting.
So actually, the first one was sort of an opera which was sort of revisiting the idea of the Lament of Ariadne, which was one of the sources which we looked at in the fall, in a very contemporary way, with sort of reversal of the gender stereotypes. So we have a guy lamenting instead of the drama queen. So in a way, in that case, there's a male character really becoming a proper drama queen. And the other opera, which is in the making actually these days because they haven't completed it yet, is about a very serendipitous encounter between Rossini, who comes to New York to meet with Lorenzo da Ponte, who did end his life in New York, and they find themselves stuck in a lockdown, exactly the kind of lockdown we are experiencing these days. So I think that was a very smart way of bringing together the tradition of the genre and our own contemporary life with all its struggles and problems.
Thank you, Eugenio. You mentioned Monteverdi, and of course today is Monteverdi's birthday. That's one of the reasons we decided to have these very conversation today. Tell two things to somebody who knows nothing about opera, why Monteverdi is important. His name is not as important as the sort of portion of his name that is Verdi to normal opera goers, but why is Monteverdi important and why we should know him better, and which is a piece that you would suggest people should listen to introduce themselves to Monteverdi?
Right. Well, the usual narrative is that Monteverdi invented opera. Now, this is not correct in the sense that other people right before Monteverdi were also working on this new genre, very hybrid genre. So we have a few composers active in Florence around 1600, just a few years before Monteverdi did join the group of composers experimenting with operas. I guess that one of the reasons why Monteverdi is considered the father of opera is also because he really came up with some wonderful masterworks. Of course, Orfeo is often remembered as, Monteverdi's masterwork, and it's an opera about the power of music, once again. So it's a very meta-operatic or meta-poetical kind of work. My favorite, though, within the corpus of the operas by Monteverdi is L'Incoronazione di Poppea, Coronation of Poppea, which is very political, very funny, also tragic to some extent. There's everything in there. There's love, there's passion, there's Machiavellianism, and also much sex, which of course makes it quite appealing even to modern audiences. And this is certainly one of the operas which I've been teaching and which always get a very good feedback on the part of the students.
So happy birthday to old Claudio, and let's all watch the Coronation of Poppea as soon as possible to get enthralled by his music. Now, I just wanted to give you, our audience, a sense of what each of you, I know I do nothing. I was mentioning before that I'm the only one that is an ignorant in music at Casa Italiana. All my colleagues play some instrument. My office is right on top of the auditorium, and every now and then I listen to this sublime music. I run downstairs. There's another colleague that I didn't know played beautifully piano or another instrument. So it's a very musical department, even if it's a department of Italian studies that includes historians, literary people, art historians, and so on. But to me, it was very important that we clarified this, that we clarified what all the opportunities that we offer. Some of them are for our students, and some of them, like the Opera Club, are open to younger people from the community to join us and be part of the experience. Now, in the second part of the conversation, I want to use this as one of your classes or as one of your club meetings, in the case of Julian, to ask you questions that will help young people to start going to the opera. So let's start debunking the myths. Julian, do you need a tuxedo to go to the opera?
No, you do not.
Do you own a tuxedo, Julian?
No, I do not.
Do you own a tie, Julian?
No, I do not.
Okay, good. Tell us, how do you dress to go to the opera?
I dress as I would dress to go to see a film in a cinema. I'm a strong believer that people have the right to choose the way they want to be dressed. I think the only limitation at the opera should be to not wear tall hats, but that's not in fashion right now, so I think we're good. Apart from that,
on this topic and many other topics, Julian and I do not agree, but that's another story. Which other myth would you like to debunk, Eugenio? People who have never been to the opera and maybe are afraid of going, which would be a myth that you feel like needs to be knocked down so people, and especially young people, feel free to go?
Well, often there's this idea that opera is stiff and boring, which of course is not. And I think this is one of the most important arguments to be made here. And also that it needs to be approached as a living form of art and not, you know, as something which is dead. I mean, opera is not dead or not yet. And I think what we are doing sort of, it's kind of a confirmation of that. So it's certainly not boring as a form of art. Of course, you know, I would just add that for someone who goes to the opera for the first time, you know, I think one should be wise in choosing something rather than
And I'm going to ask you
else.
for your advice, guys, about this in just 1 second. Roberto, which is the harder to die myth that you had to debunk, especially with our summer in Florence students, when we have somebody, and we have somebody reluctant to come to the opera, because you bring your group, your students, and of course they're very excited, but we bring the entire group, we bring the entire program, because we wanted to be an experience. Part of their experience in Italy must include going to see an opera. Not saying that Roberto and I convert the entire program and they all become big opera fans, but there are some sort of epiphanies during these experiences. Roberto, what is the hardest, most difficult myth to knock down for you about going to the opera?
For sure, the length. Like, it's too long, we cannot stay there. So, and of course, it's not true. I mean, there are some operas that are very long, some operas that are very short, and then they are divided in acts. There is intermission where people can talk and relax, and some of that, usually at the end, they say, it was like the time passed so quickly, and we didn't realize that was so, like we could stay even longer. So actually, the music give you the sense of time totally transform and modify, and of course the story. When you want to tell something through the opera, like using the opera as a genre, you need time building the emotions in general.
Wonderful.
That's for sure, yeah.
Thank you. One more question, following up with what Eugenio was saying. Opera is alive, is a living thing. And that's why it's exciting. People can make mistakes. People can give the performance of their lifetime. Yes, Roberto.
The making of the opera, what like Eugenio was saying, so when you bring the students to see the production of an opera, the rehearsal is so exciting, even more than sometimes the performance. One of my class in Florence, I brought in this theater where I cannot say where I am, to see.
Not yet.
We saw a rehearsal of Butterfly with it was a school, like an opera class. They were actually doing the performance of Butterfly. They loved it, the starting again the scene and try it again, the director trying the costume. So for them was really an exciting experience. So when they see the product that is growing, and there's, how do you build some production that is very, very difficult, everything that is behind, how many people are involved to have a show, a performance. We have no idea, even who write operas, and when you go to see the performance, oh my God, what I did.
So these are perfect. This is exactly what I had in mind. So we debunked a lot of myths. You don't need a tax. Not all of them are long. I can add, you can walk. After the first act, if you're really bored, go out.
Yeah, you can walk, yes.
Yeah. It's not a prison. People actually used to do that a lot, I understand, from the beginning of opera. People would stay for an act. They would have their favorite act and then leave. People liked the ballet part and went only for that. People hated the ballet part and left when they started dancing. So it's part of the experience. Also, you pick and choose. Of course, not during the act. Stay seated and shut up. That's the general suggestion we want to give to all of them. But Eugenio mentioned it's a living thing. It's alive. And you have all been deprived, and I think you're all going into some sort of withdrawal syndrome of some sort. All of you. I'm going through a withdrawal syndrome, and I'm an opera ignoramus. I'm just an opera lover. I love it. If I could, I would go to the opera every night personally. But you must be on a withdrawal syndrome from live performances. If we want to look at the bright side of the experience during these horrible times that we're living through, is that all the major opera theaters in the world are offering live streaming for free of some of their most beautiful productions. And as we know, the whole experience of the broadcast, of the filming of opera, broadcasting them live, has improved a lot over the last few years. And there are theaters that have regular programs of their performances offered in major movie theaters across the world. Is it worth it to go see an opera in HD in a movie theater? Is it worth it to see an opera in streaming on your computer or on the screen of your TV at home? We know that it's not the real thing, but it's the thing that is available to us now. So the thing that you miss the most about live opera, and your suggestion for a live streaming of a specific opera that is available, or of a specific theater that is offering fantastic things. So now we are in the phase of suggestions. You are telling us, you're giving us clues, you're giving us your favorite within the HD broadcast world. But first, you are entitled to a little bit of nostalgia and telling us what you miss the most about going to the opera live. Eugenio, you start.
Right. I mean, this is kind of a sad question because today, May 15th, I was supposed to be in Paris on a research trip, and I was supposed to go to a concert by countertenor Philippe Yarousskia du Théâtre des Champs-Élysées. So I'm missing that, of course. And
you understand why not only being a student at NYU is exciting, also being a professor at NYU is exciting, because you take a research trip to Paris and you go to the most exclusive concert of a countertenor. I'm really sorry for you. My heart goes out to you, Eugenio, really.
Yeah, I know. And you know, both my family and friends, they keep making fun of me because they say that I make plans with my research trips studying the calendars of opera seasons around, which is in fact true. So, you know, I can't really deny that. But the point is that I think what I really miss of the live experience is the live show itself, but also the preparation in a way. You know, I mean, I like to get there. I like to spend some time in the halls. I like to spend some time in the foyer. I like to maybe get together with friends and people who are also attending the show and talk, not only about the show, but also about many other things. And so it's a kind of a social form of interaction, which I really miss. And then, of course, you know, the powerful impact of some voices in a house, in an opera house, can't be really sort of the same when we watch something online or on the screen.
Eugenio, a suggestion for a streaming or an HD experience that you feel nobody should miss, especially people who are not already introduced?
Well, I guess that the best way to start this day is probably to look at what big theaters are doing. The Metropolitan Opera has this fabulous program of operas given every single day. There's a new one. And so people can freely access these huge catalog of streamed operas, those were all live performances, so they keep the vibe of a live performance recorded. And they also do a very good job at providing especially beginners with a bunch of materials which they can, use to familiarize with the title. So, there are synopsises and details about the opera, the production, the singers. And of course, as you were saying earlier, with streaming, you can just interrupt if you don't like it. And you can maybe switch to something else. So I think it's a nice way to get into testing one's relationship with opera.
Thank you, Eugenio. Julian, you even interrupted. You had the option to continue in a virtual way the meetings of Opera to the People Club that you started, that you founded at the Casa, and you decided not to do it because, tell us why. So you must really miss something about live opera, and exactly. Then your suggestion for broadcast.
Well, I mean, I can't but echo all the things that Eugenio was saying. I would specify that as of course anything that can be done to get people into opera is I can't but applaud it, and so of course go see opera in HD and streaming any way you can. It's far from the real thing, and I think that what's missing in it most is what actually can capture the most the passion of a first-time goer, and that is the fact that a stage director who has to stage an opera in a live space, in a room, keeping into account the architecture of the space and the anatomy of the singers' voices and their positioning and everything, can't deal with things with cinematic aspects such as the close-up and things like that. So it's a complete different language. Cinema and theater, live theater, are two different languages. So if you see an opera in HD, you will be distracted and coerced into concentrating on things that you wouldn't in a live theater, which can be a plus, but it's definitely not the same thing. And what I try to do with Opera to the People is to enchant a new audience in what it sounds like to be in a 4,000 seat theater without microphones.
You said 4,000?
Well,
think about the one I have behind me. Think of 16,000.
Yeah. But they have to use mics in that one. So
you don't want to spoil my theater. Julian, thank you. Suggestion for the HD and live streaming. Your favorite? Have you been following any theater in particular? Or
I've been following a couple, but as I said, I'm not that gung-ho about it. So I tend to be more nostalgic. So if I feel like watching an opera, I go back to the old productions that I love and cherish and that bring me joy. So, and most of the things that the Met is doing, I had the luck to see them live, so it's
you just sit at home and cry and just hope that they reopen soon.
I have time to concentrate on other things that I don't get time to do,
other pleasures of life. Good for you, otherwise it would be very sad. Roberto, what is the thing that you miss the most, and then your suggestion for
for me too, like the acoustic voice is absolutely something that you cannot listen in a digital platform for sure. So what I miss the voice is the instrument, the orchestra, the voices, because they arrive into your body when you are in the theater. And of course, the screen doesn't give this the same effect, the physical emotion that you can have on a stage. At the same time, I can tell that for the teaching point of view, that is super sad, of course, with Zoom, but we have the opportunity to speak with the real artist in class. That is difficult to bring them to class. And an example is actually Eugenio just about René Fleming in his class, that when I heard about it, I was super excited, and I was not in his class. class. I could do something like that before, but now.
Eugenio, let's repeat that. You had
Yeah,
René Fleming in your class. Tell us briefly about that, please.
Well, yes, she kindly joined for a Q&A with the students because we had gone through several productions in which she had been starring, and she kindly answered a very interesting set of questions. And, you know, this was really possible because of the technology, right? Of course, you know, she's been extremely generous with us, but certainly to do these via Zoom has been much easier than arranging for a real in-person kind of meeting. So, you know, I guess that we need to be creative with our means while we use them. And this was certainly a great opportunity. And the students loved that. I think that was the hit of the spring class.
Thank you. Roberto, your suggestion for live streaming an HD broadcast?
Yeah, the Met for sure. And then there is also, like if you are Rai, Italian Rai, they do Rai 5, they do some nice performance right now from, you know, the La Scala di Milan and other places. So yeah, this is something that I follow, but also.
And the Verdi Opera Festival has put up the productions.
Are all canceled, but they are doing something like the Summer Opera Festival. They want to transform in a different way the season. So they already said that like Santa Fe Opera is canceled, and I think, but they are not stopping. They are trying to have singers performing from home. We just saw together like the Met Gala, that was an example of what you can actually have, a very long performance, of course, but still you have the option to select the singers that you like, the operas that you like. So you have the freedom, but at the same time, what they offer is immense, it's a lot.
Yes, yes. Now I'm asking you an effort because I want you to be super brief, because I want to go through the other points that I have for you, because now they're the real suggestions for young people that want to start going to the opera. First of all, which opera they should start with? And it's for you first, Julian. They are going on a date. They think opera is a good idea. They've seen Pretty Woman since they were kids, and this is going to do it. My date is going to be so impressed. My boy, my girl is going to be so impressed. They're going to fall for me. Which is the opera they should take their date to?
Okay, well, for the date, I don't know, but let's say maybe I would definitely go with Verdi, probably mid-Verdi or maximum Aida, maybe a Rigoletto, something like that. I think it's because they tend to be not too long, very clear. The music is great. You've probably heard some of the hits already, but in general, the hits, operas like Carmen and La Bohème are always good.
Good starters.
Yeah,
good starter. Not you sort of ignore my date side of the question. Eugenio, can you help me out? Suggest the perfect date opera.
Well, I mean, the perfect date opera, according to my own taste, maybe it's not going to be what younger people would look for. I mean, I'm very biased because I think that the best way to start is something similar to what Julian was suggesting. I have one opera in mind by Verdi, which is very banal, but, you know, I mean, it's a masterwork, and this is La Traviata. I think that La Traviata is a great way to start because, you know, it's a fairly tight kind of action. It's easy to follow. The characters are amazing, particularly, of course, the protagonist. And there are so many interesting implications in all respects. And, you know, it's just a constant flow of something interesting happening. And I think that would be a nice way to start. But the choice is hard, you know.
Roberto, suggestion, first time to the opera. You have to make that decision for lots of students. When we are in Florence, you basically get to decide for the entire group which is their first opera. What should be their first opera, and what leads you in that decision?
They really like comic opera. That maybe is a kind of so Barbiere di Siviglia for sure is an easy choice, and they they really like, you know, the comic aspect of the opera for sure. For another one that can be, because it depends also to the student, for my personal test, I would choose Tosca. It was my first opera, so I had in personal, like, I could leave all this drama and the bloody scene, and you know, it's kind of also the taste that there is now in the set, in the series in TV. So I think Tosca can be also really one choice.
Perfect. And you introduced me to the next question. Which was your first opera, and what got you started in your love for opera? Roberto just answered, so we're going to skip him. It was Tosca that did it for him. Eugenio, what did it for you? What is your first opera? What was your first opera? And was it that the time in which your love affair with opera started, or it took you some time?
Well, actually, this is something which started very early, in the sense that the first opera was when I was 6, and this was Cavalleria Rusticana. And I was lucky enough to be in Siena, which is my hometown, when Shirley Verrett sang Cavalleria Rusticana there at the end of her career. That was really a happening in, you know, this sort of operatic business, and it's kind of something which is still remembered by opera goers. But then I've had a long period when I didn't really go to the opera again, something sort of restarted, I think, at the beginning of my college years, and I think that I really got into loving opera so much through Mozart. Così fan tutte is one of my favorite operas, and Le Nozze di Figaro, and of course Don Giovanni, were, I think, the 3 operas which brought me back into that sort of track. Very good.
Julian, well, you got started very early on opera, I know.
Yeah, in a very similar way, I would say, to Eugenio. I mean, I grew up in a musical family. Both my parents are musicians, and I remember that growing up, all my VHSs, you know, I had all my favorite Disney movies and stuff like that, and mixed into them were the, you know, the Ponel Cenerentola from La Scala and the Strehler productions at La Scala and all these operas. And I would, you know, as a kid, I almost didn't see the difference between watching Disney Robin Hood and watching Rossini's.
What happened when you tried to play them with your little friends?
Shock and awe, I guess.
Julia, but which one was the first opera you saw live?
Which
you have recollection? Because I assume your parents took you when you were not able to.
Well, the opera that stuck with me was my parents brought me to Salzburg in '96, I believe, to attend the whole rehearsal process of a new Otello directed by Ermanno Olmi, conducted by Abbado with the Berliner Philharmonic, with Domingo singing Otello, and
whoa, way to start.
Raimondi singing Iago, and Barbara Frittoli doing, I think,
esagerato come sempre.
And that, Julian. And I was.
How old were you?
I was 11.
Okay.
And that sort of got me into it. I managed, you know, I was there for the rehearsals. I saw it come to life. But then I must say, like Eugenio, I had my high school period, I was mostly concentrated in rock music and stuff like that. I wasn't that into opera. It's a love that came back sort of after high school, I would say, which I think is an important point, that there is an age. I think that teenagers are not the right audience for opera, that I think that actually the perfect age is soon after that, like right.
But would you all, and I'm asking all of you, because I believe there are many people in our audience that are parents and grandparents, but there is an age before being adolescents in which you are the perfect audience for opera. I started like you, I was 6 or 7 in this theater right behind here, and I saw Aida, and it was magic. It was the most beautiful fairy tale I'd ever seen. And I was right there in the middle. And I remember many years later, I took my little cousin, Francesco Maria, who was also 6, to see opera, not a great production, the Teatro Sociale in Mantova that was crumbling down, unfortunately. But with his brothers, we told him the plot. And of course, we emphasized the part about the warrior, much more than the part about the love story that bored him to death. And the kid who was 6 couldn't be still for a minute. But at the end of the 3rd act, I suggested that we went out and have a hot chocolate and then go back and pick up the others. He said, I've been here until now. I want to see how it ends. So there is a part of opera that is really appealing to young kids. And then I agree that there is, and Roberto and Eugenio, is that your experience too, that there is a parenthesis growing up that we probably shouldn't even try to push opera too hard on adolescent and pre-adolescents? What is your take on that?
Well, I mean, if I think about my own experience, that is exactly the case. I mean, I have to say that as an adolescent, I was very much into instrumental classical music for two reasons. One reason is because I was studying violin at the time. And so, you know, my musical universe was really mainly about instrumental stuff. And then also because my parents love music, particularly instrumental classical music. So the kind of soundtrack which I had at home was mainly instrumental music. Then, though, when I moved to college, almost, you know, sort of by accident, I had a chance to begin to attend performances live, and I've always been very passionate about drama in general. So I thought, this is interesting, music and drama together, and that was sort of a rediscovery. So, I mean, I agree. There's a moment in life when we are kids when we can really digest opera paradoxically very easily. And it's kind of an immediate sort of response. You know, you may fall asleep, you may enjoy it, you wake up, that's totally fine. But then I think you need maybe to wait a little bit more to get into a more deep sort of appreciation of this art form.
Yeah, for me it was kind of the same. I have to a musical family. My aunt was a soprano, but my grandmother was going was part of this group like opera to the people in Messina, and they were going to Catania because there were lots of performances in Catania with a bus. All of these old, like they had the age of my grandma. They were all going with a bus to see the opera. And it was late at night, so until midnight I was like 12, I was going there, and then they were seeing the performance, coming back, they were screaming on the mic about, you know, the singers, if they're good, they were not good. So there was kind of this excitement until 2 a.m. So I loved all this excitement for sure, but for a kid that is 12, that doesn't have this like sleep, like they need to sleep. For me, I remember was, even though it was so difficult to you know, the traveling to reach the opera there, but in the moment I was going to be there and have the Arancino in Catania, of course, the emotion of the theater, and it was really, really exciting. So of course it was not easy, the process, but it built like all the time that was spending with my grandma. For me, it was the love to stay with my grandma for sure. But then it was the same passion, so she could transfer me the same passion that she had all my life.
Thank you. I could talk to you guys for another hour and a half, but I think this is all the time we have. And it's amazing because these are my friends, these are my colleagues, these are the people I work with, and I've already spoken with them for hours and hours and hours about this. I never get tired. I hope you understand what I was telling you before is true. New York University, Casa Italiana, and the Department of Italian Studies are the best place for young people to be introduced to the opera and start loving it passionately for the rest of their lives. You saw it thanks to my colleagues and friends who joined me today. Julian Sachs joined us from which theater, Julian?
For those who didn't recognize already, this is the Royal Box at La Scala in Milan, which happens to be, I guess, larger than my Bushwick apartment.
Thank you. Roberto, where are you joining us from?
Yeah, a little smaller. My theater is in Busseto, Teatro Verdi. It was dedicated to Maestro Verdi.
Wonderful. It's a very small theater, right?
It's very small theater, yes.
It's precious.
Yeah, but still they could perform here at Falsa, Aida, so they really do a great job, even though the theater is very small.
And Eugenio, thank you for bringing in some non-Italian stuff, because we claim opera to be Italian, so everywhere opera is performed is a piece of Italy. But that theater is not in Italy. Where are you joining us from virtually?
Well, virtually, I'm at the Royal Opera House in London, which is my favorite opera house ever. So I'm delighted to be speaking from here.
Wonderful. And of course, I'm joining you from the Arena di Verona, that is, as you know, the Roman amphitheater in the main square of Verona, Piazza Bra, and it's the biggest opera theater. I believe now it's about 15,000 because they added seats, so you cannot cram up to 20,000 that used to be the previous sitting cup. Of course, performances are suspended. We are trying to understand what's going to happen, and I chose it because that's where I went to see my first opera when I was 7. Thank you so much, Julian, Sachs, Roberto Scarcella Perino, and Eugenio Refini for being with us, for really giving us a sense of your love and passion for opera, what drives you, and what drives you in your job of bringing other people to share in that beauty. And talk about beauty, our next Tutti a Casa, Wednesday, May 20th, 5 p.m. in New York, le ore 23 in Italia, Atelier di Bellezza, so from beauty to beauty. So we're going from the beauty of music to the visual beauty of books. And my friend Ennio Ranaboldo is going to engage in a conversation with Eleonora and Elisa Tallone. That are the last generation of the Tallone family to create the most beautiful books ever, still printed, the old-fashioned, precious fonts, beautiful papers. I know all of us are now leaving our eyes on the screen of tablets and phones, but we wanted to really raise these hymn to the beauty of the physical book that you want to hold and touch and look at and smell. So join us on Wednesday, May 20th, 5 p.m. in New York, le 23 in Italia, for a conversation with Eleonora and Elisa Tallone. Atelier di Bellezza, l'arte di uno stampatore editore unico al mondo e il più amato da Pablo Neruda. See you next week. Bye.